Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles, where today we have well technically tier 10, but a quarter of both teams are super ships, so you could argue this is in fact a tier 11 battle here on the Warriors Path map. It's domination mode, not random battle, so there's that. Unfortunately for Flubber here, in the tier, technically I suppose 11 super ship, the USS Annapolis, the matchmaking has not been kind. But before we cover that in greater detail, this burst fire combat instruction here is one of the things that makes the Annapolis a super ship, and distinct from the Des Moines, the other American tier 10 auto-loading 8-inch gun-armed heavy cruiser, upon which this is pretty much based. What that combat instruction does is it turns these 8-inch rifles into machine guns for a few seconds, massively increasing the amount of burst damage that it does, but at the cost of giving you an extremely long reload afterwards. The thing is, the Annapolis doesn't really need it. I mean, it's one of those things that's nice to have. If you have to do an absolute shit ton of damage right the hell now, that's what the combat instruction is for. But activating it actually significantly reduces your overall damage per minute. You get a sub 1 second reload on these 12 8-inch guns. But once that combat instruction expires, you're left twiddling your thumbs for more than 35 seconds while you're waiting for the guns to reload again. I don't think Flubber actually uses his combat instruction at all during the course of this particular domination battle here on the Warriors Path map. Oh look, that's nice. The friendly Shimakaze up ahead is laying a smokescreen for him. It's a shame there's an aircraft carrier. Oh yeah, the matchmaking. Yeah, the matchmaking has not been kind. You can see the enemy Grosser Kurfürst up there took a couple of shots before the smokescreen was laid and scored a couple of hits, although nothing critical. There are 5 battleships in play on each team, which is really bad news if you're in a cruiser. But there are also 4 destroyers in play, which would normally be really bad news if you were in a battleship. But this is tier 10. Well, you could argue tier 11. And there's so much radar and so much long-range hydro. Yes, Grosser Kurfürst, we're looking at you, but he's not alone. And of course the air spotting from HMS Eagle over there, which is going to make life extremely interesting for the destroyer captains too. Oh look, the Shimakaze's already gotten himself air spotted and is suffering the consequences. He's managed to get some torpedoes away. Flubber's gotten himself air spotted as well, but you know, that's fine. He's in the USS Annapolis with some of the most powerful anti-aircraft defences in the game. Look, he shot down 4 aircraft. Well, 5 aircraft. Holy crap. No, wait. 6 aircraft. Wow, what's going on here? Yeah, don't get excited. Those were patrol fighters. He didn't shoot down any of the dive bombers. Wargaming would have you believe that patrol fighters are there to actually intercept and protect you from enemy aircraft. This is bullshit. Because they're completely useless at doing that. What patrol fighters are in this game for is 1, spotting destroyers and making their lives even more difficult than they need to be, and 2, making you feel good about having anti-aircraft guns, because patrol fighters don't have any health or armour, and they're very, very easy to shoot down. So you can go, look, I'm helping, when you're actually not. That's what patrol fighters are for. To make you believe that your anti-aircraft defences are actually doing something, when of course they're not. So, speaking of destroyers, that Shimakaze's actually managed to take that central cap at Bravo. Good job. And he's gotten a kill. Those torpedoes found one of the enemy destroyers. Meanwhile, Flubber in the Annapolis, being extremely cautious because there are 5 battleships in play on each team, is moved up to this central location just south of the central cap, where he can hopefully make the maximum use of his radar coverage. There's more than 1 Shimakaze on the team, by the way. The other one is, well, he's not doing anything particularly useful. If you have a look at the map, you can see him up there, completely avoiding the cap circle at Alpha, which has been flipped, presumably by an enemy destroyer, and he is instead parking himself beside an island within radar range of the enemy Annapolis, and presumably leaving the cap circle at Alpha to be flipped by the Minnesota and the Schlieffen instead. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Meanwhile, over at cap circle Charlie on the eastern end of the map, The enemy team are flipping Charlie, but it is being contested by the Santander and a pair of destroyers, including a Yamagiri and a Halland. Unfortunately, despite their best efforts, it looks like the enemy Forest Sherman has managed to flip that cap circle. The friendly Shimakaze, who flipped the central cap circle at Bravo, has just been nailed by the enemy Halland. And the Shimakaze to the west, who thought it was a good idea to ignore the cap circle at Alpha and instead go chasing after an Annapolis in open water, has just found out the hard way that it wasn't a good idea after all. One of the team is there in chat saying, oh look, our destroyers are shit again. And that's not entirely fair. I mean, the first Shimakaze did a good job. He just got outplayed by the Halland. I think it's a fair assessment of the second Shimakaze, though. So, the enemy team are more than 100 points ahead. They're 1 kill up and they have 2 of the cap circles, and now somebody is starting to flip the central cap at Bravo. Now, Flubber is ideally placed to radar that cap circle, but he's not ideally placed to shoot at anything that the radar reveals. And if you look at the disposition of the rest of his team, it doesn't look like anybody else is either. There's plenty of islands in this central cap that you can guarantee that enemy destroyer, whoever it is, probably the Halland, is hiding behind. So you could radar him. There's not an awful lot that anybody other than the friendly carrier can do about it. Besides which, there's a destroyer there, the Forest Sherman, that Flubber can actually see and do something about. Come on, Flubber. Look at the rate of fire of these guns, by the way. This is 12 8-inch guns. 4.5 second reload, and that's before things like adrenaline rush kick in. Oh, the friendly super carrier has managed to get himself a kill. I mean, they're still 100 points behind. And it's going to get worse before it gets better because, and I'm presuming it's the Halland, has just flipped the central cap at Bravo. And the Forest Sherman has managed to survive. Well, this isn't good, is it? Oh, hang on a second, somebody's flipping Alpha. Well, somebody's trying to. It's the Schlieffen. We'll come back to that in a moment. For now, I don't know why this Forest Sherman thought he was going to survive this. I mean, you do know this is an Annapolis, right? And, I mean, this rate of fire is why Flubber does not need to use that combat instruction. There's his first kill. Flubber has removed the Forest Sherman. Still not a whole lot of point in him using his radar. I mean, it's a bit like shutting the barn door after the horse has bolted. That Halland isn't... He's got no reason to be sticking around inside the cap circle anymore, and there's still really nobody on the team in a position to shoot at any targets in that central cap that the radar might reveal. Meanwhile, over at Charlie, the Santander... Can I just point out how stupid this is? I mean, it's not the Santander, it's the 2 destroyers behind him. We've got a cruiser pushing into and flipping a cap circle, while there are 2 destroyers 5 kilometers behind him, refusing to move forward and assist because there might be an enemy Yamagiri there. I mean, well done to the Santander. It's just a shame his teammates are gutless cowards. Meanwhile, we have a similar situation playing out over on the western end of the map. The Schlieffen is attempting to flip the cap at Alpha. It's a real shame the team didn't have a 5.5 kilometer stealth destroyer with a smokescreen that could have done that 5 minutes ago instead of going chasing after radar cruisers in open water. The Schlieffen's doing his best, but he's a battleship. He's not exactly hard to spot, and of course the enemy carrier is working him over. You can see that the Schlieffen's advanced right to the top northeastern corner of that cap circle to get some cover from the island, from all of those battleships up there that are pummeling him and resetting him every time the Eagle's aircraft pass overhead. And of course the Eagle is not going to be doing an insignificant amount of damage to him either because it's a super carrier. Meanwhile, over at Charlie, the Yamagiri has found his man pants and he's sneaked into the cap circle there, farming a couple of capture points off the back of all the work done by the Santander. And the Halland, honestly, I'm not entirely sure what the Halland is doing. It's a bit late to be going that way, mate. That cap circle's already been flipped. Oh, the enemy Halland's just been spotted. He is still inside the cap circle at Bravo. I'm not sure if Flubber's noticed the Halland yet, but even if he did, he doesn't have shots at him, so he's continuing to shoot at the Ohio there. But the friendly Santander has definitely noticed, judging by the Armour piercing flying across the screen there. Unfortunately, the friendly Thunderer just went down. The enemy team are now 300 points ahead. The Schlieffen has just given up on trying to take that cap circle. He just keeps getting reset. He's losing way too much health and he's not actually achieving anything. It's a shame the Minnesota down to the southwest of the cap circle couldn't have joined him in there, at least given the enemy team something else to shoot at, but well, neither he nor the friendly Iowa, even further to the south, were interested. They were quite happy to just sit back and watch the Schlieffen's health disappear. Meanwhile, Flubber just got a nasty old hit there. I mean, he's been very, very careful to not stick his neck out here. He's finally popped his radar. I mean, he can't shoot at the Halland, but possibly, and it looks like he is, the friendly Santander is shooting at the Halland, but Flubber's been extremely careful not to stick his neck out. Because if you're in a cruiser in a battle where there are 5 battleships on the enemy team and you stick your neck out, you very rapidly tend to stop being a cruiser and instead suddenly become an exciting adventure holiday destination for scuba divers. Which is of course the reason why Flubber has basically spent this entire battle thus far camped behind this rock. Then we have ourselves a bit of a good news, bad news situation. Thanks to Flubber's radar, the Santander did take out the Halland. Unfortunately, the Schlieffen has succumbed to the inevitable after his teammates to the south just watched him die. And the friendly Halland has just gone down as well. So the enemy team are now exactly 400 points ahead. And they have 2 of the 3 cap circles. The point situation is going to get worse before it gets any better, unless somebody makes a move. The trick, of course, is knowing when you're going to be able to survive making that move. It doesn't mean that you all just have to throw yourselves straight into the teeth of an enemy crossfire. Getting yourself killed doesn't achieve anything other than put the enemy team even further ahead on points. And there's still way too many battleships in play for Flubber to feel comfortable about charging forward, not to mention the Yamagiri over there. He starts to cautiously advance. He's looking for the opening. What he wants to do is move into this cap circle because somebody has to, but he doesn't want to die doing it. Fortunately, that island over there, which is the same island that almost certainly rendered it completely useless for Flubber to use his radar earlier when the Halland was flipping the cap circle, if he can get up to it without losing all of his health, that island's going to do the same for him. It would be real nice if somebody, preferably Flubber, could kill that Ohio before he does it, because there's a potential that the Ohio can get a crossfire on him as he moves in there. Of course, the Ohio, on fire and on low health, is going to be trying to duck into cover behind the mountain range up to the north. Right, Flubber, this is it. Chicks dig scars and glory lasts forever. Oh, there's the enemy Annapolis. Armour piercing loaded. Shots out. Oh, he's miscalculated just how quickly the Annapolis was moving. He readjusts his aim, but then the Annapolis goes undetected, and he is, of course, now spotted in open water. And that's a whole bunch of battleships on varying degrees of health. But cruisers are crunchy on the outside and chewy on the inside, and as long as a battleship has at least 1 hit point, its guns can still kill you. So Flubber trying to leverage the cover provided by that island while still keeping his guns firing, because he's a major source of firepower for his team here. And flipping the cap is good. I mean, it needs to be done because the enemy team are nearly 500 points ahead. But you kind of need to sink enemy ships too. Unfortunately, he's now been hydroed, which can only mean that the Grosser Kurfürst is within 6 kilometres, and initially he shifts his fire to the Bourgogne over there, because the Bourgogne is the one in the best position to get crossfire shots at him, but then the Grosser Kurfürst starts lumbering around the corner of the island, and his priorities immediately shift, and rightly so, for 3 very good reasons. That's a broadside Grosser Kurfürst at a range where 8-inch armour-piercing shells can do serious damage to it, and he doesn't have a lot of health left. 2, he has 18-inch guns, and they can really mess you up. And it's a Grosser Kurfürst, and his secondaries can really mess you up if you give him any time. So he takes out the Grosser Kurfürst, immediately switches his fire to the Izumo while ducking in behind the island here, because while the Grosser Kurfürst did a huge amount of damage to him, the Izumo's 16-inch guns can easily finish the job if he gives them the chance. He is radared. That can only be the other Annapolis, which is probably still lurking somewhere on the other side of the island, and then he achieves the Confederate Award, and Captain Halsey's special trick kicks in, Reduced main battery reload. These guns are now firing once every 2.5 seconds. These are 203mm guns. You can see why he doesn't need to use the combat instruction. He's already dishing out ridiculous amounts of damage per minute. And there's the Bourgogne. He immediately switches fire to the Bourgogne, and for two very good reasons. One, the Bourgogne is the only target that he can actually shoot at, and two, he's the only target that the Bourgogne can actually shoot at. So that's the trick to selecting your targets. You first prioritise the targets that you can kill that are trying to kill you. Actually, ooh, smart move there from the Bourgogne, by the way, because he can't overmatch his bows, so he switched to the high explosive and very, very nearly killed him. Now, here's what I want to emphasise. Right now, Flubber is flipping the enemy team's cap advantage, and he only has 3,500 health left. Okay, his repair party just came off cooldown, now he's using it. But what is the enemy carrier doing? The enemy carrier right now is the only ship on the enemy team that can actually do anything about the fact that Flubber is flipping the enemy team's cap advantage. So what exactly does the enemy carrier have to do that's more important than stopping Flubber from doing this? The friendly carrier, the Securyu, is, because he's the one that sank the Ismo, is actively assisting Flubber in flipping this cap circle and ensuring that he survives long enough to do it, and is giving him every possible means of assistance. The enemy carrier, on the other hand, is farming damage on battleships. Battleships that are not in fact doing anything useful. They're certainly not going anywhere near that cap circle at Alpha after they watched the Schlieffen die trying to do that 10 minutes ago. Well, it's not entirely fair to say that the Iowa and the Republic are doing nothing useful. I mean, they've had a tough game so far, having the undivided attention of the enemy carrier the entire battle, but the fact that they are over there occupying the enemy carrier in a position that has absolutely no influence on the outcome of the game is certainly useful, because it's making the enemy carrier useless. Oh, and there's the Annapolis. And yes. So while the enemy carrier continues to refuse to do anything useful and just farms damage on a pair of battleships that never did him any harm, and he's doing a fair amount of damage, I mean, geez. Yeah, let's not be too critical of the Republic and the Iowa. They have not had a fun time. But that carrier ignoring Flubber at the critical moment when he was the only one in a position to actually do anything about it, and instead he chose to farm damage on the Iowa and the Republic and the Schlieffen and the Minnesota, and you can see by his position just exactly how dedicated he was to doing that and absolutely that and nothing else. Moved up to the island there to get a 30-second turnaround on his strike aircraft in order to maximise his damage outputs on a bunch of ships that really weren't making much of any difference to the outcome of the battle. And it's arguably because the Eagle was more concerned with doing all of the damage instead of the right damage in the right place at the right time that he loses and Flubber wins. That's it for today. Hope you enjoyed it. And as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.